Hey, my name is Dave Warner, and I'm a designer for the Adobe Character Animator team. Character Animator is a very, very cool app that lets you bring your creations to life. In fact, here's one of mine.
Hi everyone, it's your buddy Stanny here. First off, thanks for coming to Adobe MAX and thanks for being interested in Adobe Character Animator. Character Animator is pretty awesome, but hey, I'm a little biased because my whole existence is kind of dependent on it. See, I used to be a flat Photoshop file. Yeah, believe it or not, that was me. Cold, static, lifeless. Then I jumped into Character Animator and suddenly I can move and talk and walk. And the coolest part is anyone with a webcam can control me. You move, I move. You blink, I blink. You say I'm the biggest Taylor Swift fan in the world, I say I'm the biggest Taylor Swift fan in the world. Shake it off, shake it off. Sorry, got a little carried away there. So what are we going to talk about in today's Max session? Well, we're going to walk through two projects. One quick and dirty sample project with me, and after we've learned the basics, another where we do a more polished and professional looking cartoon. Hopefully everyone will leave here today with a general understanding of what's possible in Character Animator, and ideally, you'll be inspired to use it in your own future creative projects. No matter your skill level, Character Animator is a helpful tool for animation novices and pros alike. For the newbies, animating a character has never been easier. Just name your layers a certain way in Photoshop or Illustrator, and then boom, you're animating a character within minutes, without any keyframes or complicated rigging systems. There are a ton of free puppets available too, just ready for your face, voice, and performance to bring them to life. For the more seasoned animation veterans, Character Animator has a ton of custom control and deep features, like letting you set 5 different head positions for head turns, adding physics systems for secondary animations, using multiple takes, or even merging in traditional frame-by-frame animation sequences. Look, the bottom line is animation has never been this much fun, so check out Character Animator and share your creations and stories with the world. Man, I know you got bad blood. I never used to be bad blood. Hey! Hey, how's it going? This is Dave from the Character Animator team, and today we're going to learn the basics of Character Animator, how to get started with a puppet, creating it in Photoshop, bringing it into Character Animator, tweaking some of the properties, recording a performance, and then bringing it all into After Effects to create a cartoon. Alright, so one of the first questions we get a lot is, where is Character Animator? Because it's not in my list of downloads like Photoshop and Illustrator and Premiere Pro and all of that. Well, that's because it's part of After Effects. So go to After Effects. And if you're in CC 2015 or later, you should see File, Open Adobe Character Animator, and that's what you're going to want to click to get to it. When you start up Character Animator, you should be taken to this Welcome panel. If you don't see it, just go to Window, Welcome. And then we're going to start today from a new puppet in Photoshop, so click on that. Alright, so here we've got our default template character, Stanny, and the thing to note here is he's got his layers organized and named a particular way. So we've got our main character here, and then we've got our head and body as two separate groups. And this makes sense. We want to be able to, pivot and move our head around, and then we want our body to move and sway along with it and have draggable limbs and all that fun stuff. In the head group, I've got a bunch of things like my right eyebrow, my left eye. Inside that group, I've got blink, pupil, and eyeball. And you don't have to use all of these. You can use as many or as little as you want. So if you want a disembodied one-eyed head, you can go ahead and do that. Character Animator just gives you a lot of different options to use as many or as little of these as you want to animate your characters. So if you name them and group them, just like you see here with Stanny, your character should animate in the same way. All right, so the most complex of these layers is the mouth group. And let's twirl this down, and you'll see that we've got 13 different possible mouth shapes that we can use. All right, so 3 of these, neutral, smile, and surprised, these are only going to show up if there's no talking involved. So if no audio is being picked up either from an external track or your own voice, it's going to try to match the mouth shape to the closest one of these. But there are 10 phonetic sounds, and most of the time, Character Animator is going to try to match these to what you are saying at that particular time. So it's going to analyze the audio coming in and say, okay, which one of these 10 should I be showing at this particular time? So we've got A, D, E, F, K, O, O, F, Ooh. And so at any given time, Character Animator is going to try to match those up like something like that. And as you're talking, these will cycle very quickly and make it look like the character is actually talking. All right, so I'm going to change Stanny's pants. So let's twirl back the head, twirl down the body, find the pants layer, and I'm going to get the paint bucket, select a green color. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to find Stanny's pants and paint them green. Now, down here at the bottom, we have this instructional guide that says make any changes you want, save, then switch back to Character Animator. So let's do that. We'll go to File, Save, and then let's go back to our Character Animator scene. All right, so let's go to Character Animator. It says incorporating external edits, preparing my puppet, and there you go. Now Stanny's got green pants. Great. Okay. So you can see the interoperability between Photoshop and Character Animator. You can make changes in one, come back to the other, try it out. So sometimes I'll just start with just a head and just try to get that right and then add the body on later. It's totally up to you how you want to go about it. Now when you first bring your character in, you might notice sometimes it's going to look like this, or get some really weird, distorted versions of itself that you don't want. So you have to know how to calibrate your character. First, make sure that you can see your face over in the webcam area here. If not, click the hamburger menu and go to switch to next camera or default camera until you get to the right one. Then make sure both the webcam and the microphone icons are blue, meaning they're turned on. And you should start to see these red tracking dots appear on your face and these blue dots appear on your eyes. And that's just the face tracker showing you what data it's collecting. But to set your character correctly, you want to center yourself in a comfortable position, look at your character's eyes, and then click Set Rest Pose. And what that's going to do is recalibrate your character to a default state. And so that's kind of the 0 position. That's where you're going to get started. And so anytime you feel like your character is getting out of whack and not looking correctly, just center yourself, look at your character's eyes, click Set Rest Pose, and you're back to normal. So with my character now, I can move my head and raise my eyebrows and look around with my eyes and talk. And I can drag his hands with my mouse. And you can start to see, just by naming the Photoshop file the layers a certain way, now I can interact with my character. Now sometimes everything's not going to come in perfectly correct. Maybe his eyebrows are moving too wildly or his eyes are looking cross-eyed or something like that. That's okay. We can actually tweak the parameters of our puppet by selecting it down here in the timeline. And then you'll notice all these different properties appearing over here on the right. So for example, if I twirl down Transform, I'll see things like Anchor Point. And I can drag these numbers and move him to a different location. I can rescale him, or I can skew him. Oh no, I'm stuck in a black hole. Ah! And if you make any mistakes or want to change things, just click the X next to it to reset it back to its normal value. Now one of the more helpful areas is the face properties. So I'm going to twirl this down, and you noticed probably earlier that as I was moving back and forth, my character's head was getting bigger and smaller. And that can be a funny effect for some characters, but sometimes maybe that's not what you want. So I'm going to set head scale strength to 25. And when I do that, you'll notice the head scaling is a lot more subtle. So you can roll over any of these, you'll get a little tooltip about what they do and changing these parameters to tweak your character until you've got just the right level of expressiveness. All right, so this character is looking pretty good, so I'm going to record my first performance. So I'm going to make sure I'm all the way to the beginning of the timeline. I can either drag this little blue handle or click this Go to Start button. And I'm going to read the little script that was in the worksheet here. And all I'm going to do is click the record button to start and click it again to stop. So here we go. Hey everybody, this is my first recording with Adobe Character Animator. When I move my head, my eyes, or my eyebrows, my character does the same. Hey, this is pretty great. All right, that was a fantastic performance. We could, drag it back and see it. You can scrub through it and, check out your performance and play it back. Now, you'll notice here, if I twirl down my Photoshop puppet, you see that I've recorded 2 values. There were 2 things that I was changing during that particular recording: face camera input and lip sync audio input. And you see that I now have an audio track as well. Okay, so it's recorded all this stuff, and one of the nice things is you don't have to get everything right at once. It can be kind of difficult to, worry about moving your head and your eyes and getting the voice right and dragging the arms and all of that. So luckily, Character Animator lets you record things individually if you want to. I'll show you what I mean. So over here, with my puppet selected, if I look over here on the right side, you'll notice with all my properties, they've got these red dots next to them. And that means they're armed for recording. So what this means is if I click the record button, it's going to record all these properties again. That's not what I want for this one. I just want to be able to drag them, the hands around, I think. So I'm going to deselect all of these except for dragger. And now you'll notice as my character moves around, or as I move around on my webcam, my character isn't reacting because I haven't armed the face, the lip sync, all of that stuff for recording. In fact, I'm going to turn the microphone icon off, so I'm not going to pollute my previous recording with any new audio that I'm trying to bring in. So this time I'm just going to focus on the dragger, which is the behavior of dragging particular limbs around. So let's hit record and just focus on that part.
Hey everybody, this is my first recording with Adobe Character Animator. When I move my head, my eyes, or my eyebrows, my character does the same. Hey, this is pretty great.
I'll click record again to stop. And now you'll see that performance was just added on top of my previous one. Now I could do this as many times as I want. In fact, I can do multiple takes of the same thing. So let's say I didn't like that dragger, maybe at the beginning I want him to wave differently. So I'm just going to do another recording just with that.
Hey everybody, this is my first recording with Adobe Character Animator.
And so what happened there is you should notice there is a mouse and touch input down here. And if I twirl that down, I've now got take 2 and take 3. And so that last recording I did was a new take, and that's going to appear on top. And the way the Character Animator deals with takes is whichever take is on the top layer is the one that's going to win. So in this case, take 3 is showing up here. And if I want to trim that, I can just drag on the edges there. And you'll notice that the one that is currently seen is going to be green, and it's going to gray out anything that's underneath that particular top scene. So you can start to imagine how you could really perfect a performance by, recording parts, and if you mess up a certain part, just go back and punch into that particular area, record that, and merge it all together in the end for one compelling performance. So bottom line, you don't have to record everything at once and make sure you get everything right at the same time. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this performance, and now I want to export it to After Effects to do some more stuff with it. So first, let's check our scene properties. So I'm going to click on my scene over here in the project panel, and that should bring up the properties over here on the right side. So I can set the frame rate, the duration, the width and height, all that stuff over here. I like all of these. I like to add a little bit of extra space around my characters so they don't get cut off, and then I manipulate them in the other apps. So I'm liking how this looks. So let's go to File, Export Scene. And what that's going to do is bring up the Finder and allow me to save it somewhere. So I'm just going to save it in this tutorial folder, hit save, and you'll see that it's exporting my performance behind the scenes. And this will take a few seconds. All right, so once that's done, let's see what it did. So it created a folder and an XML file, and then it has a ping file for every frame of my animation. So I did 15 seconds at 24 frames per second, so that's about 360 images that are going to show up within this folder. And you see as I go through it, it's kind of like a flip book. I'm looking at every individual frame of my animation here. If I drag all the way to the end, I will see the WAV file that I used, the audio that I recorded as well. All right, so this gives me something that I can use in stuff like After Effects. So let's go there. And once I'm in After Effects, there's a special way that you want to import Character Animator projects. Go to File, Scripts, New Comp from Character Animator Recording.jsx. That's the best way to bring things in to make sure all the syncing and the framing, the duration, and everything comes in perfectly. So I'm going to find my folder, and I'm just going to select one ping from the sequence and hit Open. And that's going to bring in a new comp with my whole performance that I just did, and the WAV file and everything working correctly. I'm going to add a background color just to make this interesting, so I'm going to go to Layer, New, Solid, and let's bring in an orange color here, and that's looking pretty good. If it appears on top of your puppet for some reason, you can just drag it down below here in the timeline. Okay, so now I've got my whole performance here of my guy moving around, and let's say I just want to move him from one side of the screen to the other. So this is just basic After Effects keyframing. I'm going to make sure I'm dragged all the way to the beginning here. I'm going to select my character, my puppet, and I'm going to drag him to one side of the screen. Then with my layer selected, I'm going to press the P key, which should bring up position. And I'm going to click this little stopwatch icon here, which sets a keyframe. Basically it's saying, okay, at 0 seconds, my character needs to start here. And then I'm going to drag all the way to the end, and I'm going to drag my character to the other side of the screen, and you'll notice that a keyframe was automatically created for me over there. So now After Effects fills in the math in between and moves my character from one side to the next. Now I could do this for a bunch of different things, right? I could do, if I press R, I can do rotation. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, just set a keyframe from rotating upside down. I could do scale by pressing S. So again, I'm just going to click the stopwatch, hit S. I'm going to move to the end. I'm going to set this to like 50 or something like that and have them shrink. And then I'm also going to do it for opacity, which is T for transparency. Stopwatch, 100%, and let's bring them down to 50% as well. And so all we're doing is just moving our character, and After Effects is kind of filling in the blanks and moving in between. And so I can move my character from one side to the next. All right, now let's face it, this is a pretty terrible project. I do not want to share this, I don't want to publish it, but hopefully this shows you the basics of getting a project from Character Animator into After Effects. Let's do something a little more professional. Here's an example of the next thing that we're going to try to create. Let me tell you something, it's a tough life being a cartoon character. Number one, they never give you enough fingers. 3, maybe 4 if you're lucky, but never 5. You ever tried playing a piano concerto or giving a deep tissue Swedish massage with 3 fingers? Yeah, I didn't think so. Number 2, oversized heads. I mean, look at me. It's a scientific marvel that my body's able to support the weight of this massive noggin. Go ahead, you try strapping 8 tons of boulders to your head and see how well you get around. And finally, the cliches, like slipping on haphazardly placed banana peels, having safes dropped on your head, or telling one final joke that everyone collectively laughs at before we are graced with seeing who the executive producer was. The health benefits are pretty good, and I don't have to wear pants, so at least I got that going for me. So we had a few things going on there. You see some foreground and background elements that are moving. We've got both the background and kind of these rocks in the foreground that are moving in front of him. You notice his eyebrows sometimes change. He's got kind of an angry look here, and then he gets kind of a worried upward slanting eyebrows here. And then we also change between close-up shots and kind of these medium shots too, just to give it a little bit of visual diversity. So let's see how to do this. All right, so let's pick a character. You get to pick from one of 3 characters that are included as in the sample file. So if you haven't done already, in the description below this video, there should be a link to download all the files that we're about to talk about. So I'm just going to go to File, Import, and I'm going to open up that Character Animator Example Assets folder, and I should see 3 puppets here. Aurora, who's a snow woman, Fury, who's a red monster, and Wendigo, who's a crazy snow creature. So I'm just going to pick Fury, but you can pick any of these. They're going to work just fine. And let's click on him and bring him in. And once they're in, you're going to see them appear with a little marionette icon over here that signals they're a puppet. If I double click on this, you'll see I bring up the puppet panel. And this is kind of an x-ray view of my character that allows me to see kind of where all the handles are on it, make sure that I've got everything correct. And there's some advanced stuff you can do here, like adding special behaviors like breathing, particle effects, and cycle layer animations, but we're not going to get into that right now. We want to add our puppet into a scene. So we've got our actor and we want to add him or her onto a stage. So with my puppet selected over here in the project panel, I'm just going to go down to the bottom left corner and click Add to New Scene. And this is going to bring my character into a stage. So basically you take your actor and actress, that's your puppet, and then you put them on a stage, that's your scene. Now, remember that we don't want our puppet to get cut off on any of the edges, so let's select our scene and change the width and the height until we can see all of our puppet. I'm also going to set the duration here to 50 because this is going to be about a 45-second to 50-second cartoon. Frame rate at 24 frames per second. That's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to select my puppet down here in the timeline, and that's going to bring up the puppet's properties. I'm just going to reposition him a little bit with transform, get him to just the right position that I want, give him room all around. And then remember we want to calibrate our character, so we're going to look at his eyes and press set rest pose, and that should set him back to his regular size. I might adjust the face a little bit, so I'm going to do the same head strength thing that I did before, set head strength to 25. I'm just going to dangle, and I'm going to set spring stiffness to 75. This particular character has little fur strands on the top of his hair, and so as I move around, those are going to dangle and do some cool little physics qualities to them. All right, now with this particular character, we actually have some external audio that we already recorded from a professional voice actor. Not really, just me. But we're going to bring that in, and we're going to then apply the lip syncing to analyze that audio so the mouth will match that particular voice. So let's again import, File, Import, and we're going to select the talk track cartoon.aif. Let's bring that in, and then all we have to do is just drag that into our timeline down here, and you'll see the audio layer appear. All right, I'm going to turn the microphone icon off because I don't want that to record or do anything else. And with my puppet selected down here, I'm going to go to Object, Compute Lip Sync from Scene Audio. What that's going to do is analyze the audio, and it's going to record lip syncing for each of those words. So it's going to analyze the whole thing, look for all the ah, ee, oo, k, whatever sounds, and make the mouth match those shapes. So this is great if you want professional audio, record it separately. So here I recorded, with a condenser microphone separately, put it in Adobe Audition to fine tune it and bring a hard limiter on it, bring out some background noise, and then bring it in here. And then I can focus on the other aspects of my performance instead, like moving my head around, moving my arms, that sort of thing. All right, so that's done. And you'll notice as I drag through here that the mouth shape is changing based on the audio file that was brought in. So that's looking pretty good. I don't want to do any more with lip syncing, so I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to disarm that. And now let's just focus on something like the face. So I'm going to turn everything else off. Actually, I'm going to keep dangle on because I do want those that hair to dangle as well. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to record a whole performance with just worrying about my face. So let's try that for a second. Let me tell you something. It's a tough life being a cartoon character. Number one, and I don't have to wear pants, so at least I got that going for me. So I just hit record again to stop, and now I'm going to turn these off. And let's move on to keyboard triggers. Okay, so some characters have special keyboard triggers that you can press to make them actually do special things. So remember this character's eyebrows, for example. Let's click on keyboard triggers. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. And you'll notice if I hit the A key, my character gets angry eyebrows. If I hit the W key for worried, it gets worried eyebrows. So to make this work, you have to do two things actually. You have to make sure that your puppet is selected down here in the timeline, the one that you want to interact with, and then you need to make sure that your scene is selected. It has the blue line around it, so you can't select any of these other areas. It has to be this window. And then if I press A or W, this character will do things. Now, some of the other characters do different things based on different key triggers, so experiment with each character, look at the Photoshop file. If there's a help file, look at that, and it should teach you how each of these characters work. So I can record a whole other performance just focusing on the eyebrows and the keyboard triggers. So let's try that. Let me tell you something. It's a tough life being a cartoon character. That going for me. All right, so now I'm pretty happy with the keyboard triggers, so I'm going to disarm that. And the last one I'm going to do is dragger. I'm going to drag the hands around of this character, and in this character I can also drag his tail around as well. You can always play around with the character, see what works and what doesn't. So I could drag his hand here, or his tail. So I'm going to record a performance of that. Let me tell you something. It's a tough life being a cartoon character. Number one, and I don't have to wear pants, so at least I got that going for me. All right, so that's a pretty good performance. I'm pretty happy with how it all looks, and I could continue tweaking it, but I think for the purposes of this tutorial, let's move on to After Effects. So again, I'm going to go to File, Export, Scene. I'm going to select where I want it to be saved, and the same tutorial folder is fine for this. It will go through the whole export process in the background, and we'll wait a second. All right, within After Effects, let's bring it in the same way. File, Scripts, New comp from Character Animator Recording.jsx. Again, I'm going to find the folder and select one ping from the sequence. And now I've got my comp. Now for this particular cartoon, I want to share it as a YouTube video. So I'm going to make a new composition by going to Composition, New Composition. And I'm going to set my settings like this: 1280 by 720, 24 frames per second, and a 50-second duration. Once I've got that, I'm going to click OK. And that's going to create a rectangle, kind of a widescreen feel that's more similar to what I've seen usually on YouTube. And then all I'm going to do is take my scene here and drag it into the comp. So I took my scene, Puppet Fury, and dragged it into this comp. And then comp 1 is what I'm going to be working with. So now I've got my character in this new 1280 by 720 comp. I'm just going to drag him to a different position, select him, press S, and drag so he scales down a little bit. And that looks pretty good. All right, now we have to give him an environment to be in. So let's go to File, Import, File. And within that same Character Animator example assets, let's bring in the background and foreground elements. We have background canyon, background ridge, and foreground canyon rocks and foreground hills. Select them all, bring them in, and here we go. Now you can select whatever background or foreground elements you want. I'm going to select something different from the initial video, so I'm going to use the ridge as a background. So I'm just going to drag that into my comp here, and then I'm going to do the foreground hills as well. I'm going to drag that in. Now, basically I want to make a sandwich between these and my character, so I'm just going to do the background, drag it below my character, and then the foreground, I'm going to drag that down so we see a little bit more of him over there. Okay, so now I've got basically 3 layers, the background, my puppet, and the foreground. So let's do the exact same thing we were doing with Stanny before, where we move our character from one side of the screen to the other. So I'm going to make sure I'm at the beginning with my character selected. I'm going to press P. I will select the stopwatch icon to select his start position, and I'm just going to drag him to this side of the screen. Then I'm going to drag all the way to the end, and I'm going to drag my character to the other side of the screen, and you'll see that it created a keyframe for me. And just like before, After Effects fills in the middle, and so my character has the feeling of walking across the screen. So to sell the effect, we're going to move the foreground and background elements as well. So I'm going to get a little bit further away view. Let's do like 50%. And this will let me see a little bit more of the outside elements. So let's start with the foreground. I'm going to take this foreground and select it, make sure it's selected in the timeline. I'm going to drag it all the way to the right side here, and I'm going to do the exact same keyframing. Have it selected, press P, click the stopwatch, and drag it all the way to the end, and I'm going to drag it all the way to the other side. So I'm basically making it, move the opposite direction of my character. And you'll notice as I drag, that's what's happening. Now in the middle, it kind of cuts him off a little bit, and I don't like that as much. So I'm just going to drag it down and make a, make it kind of move down throughout the sequence as well. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the background, but let's make it a little bit slower. If you've ever ridden in a car before, you know that things close to you, like guardrails or signs or whatever, move really fast. But the background, the mountains and the clouds and whatnot, seem to move a little bit slower. So I'm actually going to scale this down a little bit. Let's get it like to 86 or something like that. I just pressed S with it selected to bring up scale. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did with the foreground, except a little slower. So with it selected, press P, press the stopwatch, make sure it's all the way to the right side, drag all the way to the end of the timeline, and I'll drag this all the way to the left. I'm going to set my view back to fit so I can see everything, and now let's see what happened. Cool. So I kind of have this walking effect happening with my character. And I could go into further detail, making him kind of bob up and down to really help sell the effect a little bit more. I could zoom in and out, all sorts of stuff, but this is pretty good for what we're trying to accomplish here today. Now to add a little depth of field, I'm going to actually select the foreground layer. I'm going to go to Effects, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur. And over in this effects panel, I'm just going to bring the blurriness up a little bit. And you'll see that kind of makes the foreground a little bit blurrier. I'm going to set that to about 10 or so. And I could do the exact same thing to the background. Select the background. It should remember it. Fast blur here in effects. And just blur that a little bit. Maybe like 3 or something like that. So again, you get this sense of kind of depth of field, and it looks kind of nice. All right, so now we've got a pretty nice scene, but if all we're doing with this is having our character move from one side of the screen to the other, and that's all we're doing for 45 seconds, that's going to be a pretty boring cartoon. We got to have a little bit of shot variety. Now, there's a few different ways you could go about this, right? You could export like this and then do a close-up scene and export that and edit it all in Premiere Pro if you wanted to. This is a pretty simple cartoon, so we're going to do it all in After Effects for today. So I'm going to get back to my project by clicking this little arrow here and going to Project, and that should bring me back to my main area. And then I'm going to make a new comp by going to Composition, New Composition, and it should be the same settings as before. It should have remembered 1280, 720, 24 frames per second, and 50-second duration. Hit OK, and that's going to create this new Comp 2. And all I need to do is drag Comp 1 into Comp 2, and that's basically bringing Comp 1 into Comp 2. So I've got my whole thing without any of those layers or anything that we saw before. It's just all appearing as one comp. Okay, so with this comp selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate, and that's going to create a new version over top of it. And with this new comp selected, I'm going to press S. And for scale, I'm just going to scale it up and drag it until I get a nice close-up shot of my character. That's looking pretty good. Now, I made this original artwork pretty big. I think the character is like 1500 by 1500 pixels. So I made it, hopefully look pretty nice for close-ups. Obviously, if your artwork is lower res, this sort of thing isn't going to be possible. It's going to look a little pixelated, but luckily this character I did pretty high res, so we should be okay. Once this is done, I'm going to duplicate this layer 2 more times. Duplicate and duplicate. So now I have 4 different layers, basically my 3 close-up shots that I duplicated, and then the 1 original shot. Now, I don't want the audio repeating 4 times, so I'm going to click on these audio icons to turn all these top layers audio off and just keep the audio track for the bottom layer running. Now I'm going to trim each of these top clips to alternate when the shot is showing up. So what I do is drag over the edge of a particular layer, and you'll see it changes to this little left or right arrow. I'm just going to drag that to about 5 seconds. I'm going to do the same for the end. Drag it all the way here to about 10 seconds. That's looking pretty good. If you can't see your timeline, by the way, just drag this little timeline viewer all the way to the left and you should be able to see everything. I'm going to do the same for these top layers, so maybe 20 to 25 seconds and maybe like 35 to 40 seconds. You see it kind of creates this little staircase pattern, and all I'm doing is now as I drag through, it's looking for what's on top. So at the bottom layer, we're still seeing this medium shot, and then it's going to switch to this close-up. It's going to go back to the medium shot and then go to this close-up. Now he's starting to get off the screen here, so I'm going to select this and drag it back to kind of recenter him. And we're going to go back. And finally, he's completely off the shot right now, so let's drag that back to make sure we can see enough of him. That's looking good. And there you go. So now we've got a pretty nice 45-second cartoon. There's a few other, finishing touches that I like to do. I always like to add an extra layer over top of everything to add a little extra color. So if I go to Layer, New, Solid, let's use this orange color. That looks great. If I'm not seeing my blend modes, I just click Toggle Switches Modes down here. And I can select Overlay. And that's going to give it kind of this warm orange look. And I could change the opacity of that by pressing T and bringing the opacity down to something like 50 or something like that. So here's how it looked before, kind of this bluish colder look, and here's how it looks now, kind of this warmer orange look. And you can add as many of these as you want. So look at what we did. We created our character, and then we brought him into an environment with foreground and background elements. But imagine having way more layers than this. Imagine having clouds in the background. Imagine having a sun. Imagine having blades of grass in the foreground or birds flying by. You could add hundreds of layers to make this, even a more complicated scene if you wanted to. It's totally up to you how you decide to go about this. You could also imagine having, multiple characters talking to each other, maybe an establishing shot where the character's on, really small in the distance and you zoom in really quick to them, all sorts of things. So hopefully this teaches you some basics. I also included some background tracks that you could add in here, some soundtracks if you wanted to add a little bit of music in the background. And what you would want to do with that is import it in, just drag it into your comp, and then you would want to twirl it down until you see the audio properties, and you probably want to change those audio levels to something a little bit less loud, like -18 or something like that, so it won't overpower the vocals. There you go. So I hope this helped introduce you to Character Animator. Would love to hear what you think. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think in the feedback forums as well. Good luck, and thanks for watching.